Hey there, YouTube. Welcome on back to Artichoke Dip. My name is Rob, solo tabletop gamer. And in this video, I'm going to get into the creative process side of solo RPG gaming. And what do I mean by that? So you know what? Before we get too far down the rabbit hole in this conversation, it should be at this point, I should ask you, if you're enjoying these videos, let me know. Drop me a like. And if you just found my channel and stumbled upon it, and you like solo RPGs, or you just like watching the content, it does not matter either way. Don't forget to click the subscribe button. It does help out, and the more input I get, the better refine I can make my videos. Okay, with that out of the way, let's jump into the creative side of it and how to get the most out of your RPG games. I think one of the things that has happened, and I can say that I myself as a proponent of it out there, is really hammering into the head, randomized tables, randomized tables, randomized tables. Randomized tables are great when they're used as a tool, but when they become dependent on too much, particularly in a solo RPG environment, they become a crutch. And at that point, your games can really lose their gusto, we'll say, because at this point now really all you're doing is you're just fiddling with a dice matrix is all you're doing. So they kind of draw you back out of that, because you got to remember something about a tabletop RPG. Tabletop RPG at its core is like the old ghost stories around a campfire, where a group of people would sit, each one at that point contributing another piece to the story until it goes all the way around the campfire. And then at last, at that point, the tale was told, each point being added from that person's perspective of fear, terror, laughter, whatever it be, made that cohesive story. And that's what made it so unique. Solo RPG is no different than that, believe it or not. But the proponent is the imaginative side of it. Now, this is where I really enjoy the processes of RPG. I have to admit, with RPG games, there's many different, I'm going to say, parts of the game that people typically favor above others. Some people favor character creation. Others, they may like the dice mechanics. Some, it may be bonuses and penalties that one system may particularly happen to have over another. Or it could be a descriptive, like a narrative style, a very in-depth narrative style. A game that comes to mind is like Genesis, where it has its own dice system and interprets for you for a more enriched NPC experience for a solitaire setting. Either of which, you should not shortchange yourself when it comes to imagination and tools that you can use around you to enrich in it. Now, I can say for myself, I can sit and imagine this stuff in my head and play it out. Sure, as written, sure, there's a lot of great solo content out there that moves very nicely with the dice matrix, and you can hammer out a game session in a very short amount of time, within about an hour. And at first it can feel gratifying, but then after a while you'll notice even that will become stale, and it's missing that ingredient, imagination, that comes from you and your input. And it's more than just, I have a goblin out of this let's say monster manual here, and this artist's rendition of it is what I should be imagining. No, absolutely not. That's their perspective on it, and it should not limit it to yours. And with that being said, let's jump on over to the table and take some looks at some examples I'm using and the next scenario I'm going to create and how I'm going to do that. So, it doesn't matter. either way that I do it, whether I'm writing up encounter tables for the game, or whether I'm doing a backstory, or perhaps I'm just doing some sketchings to get an idea of encounters and stuff like that. At times you'll stray off course, but let me tell you something. When you do stray off course and you come up with a stupid, zany idea or something like that, don't dismiss it. As a matter of fact, just write down your notes or whatever with it, set it to the side to refine it later. You never know. And the reason why I say this is sometimes one misshapen eye for a drawing, when you come back to it and you look at it, may turn into something completely and utterly different from your imagination. Maybe something that's not even related to your game, something that may have been rummaging around back there in your imagination, and will help at that point refine your skills and your imagination when it comes to character and encounter building a little bit better. Sort of like this. So I know that that picture may look juvenile, it may even look zany, ridiculous, whatever else. It's okay. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. What started out as a few scribble lines on a piece of paper that I had set aside with the intentions of it becoming scrap paper later on, as I looked at it with a fresh perspective and just sat down in a different frame of mind and looked at those lines, it turned into something completely different. And I just let my imagination go. I came in with the intentions to work on something else, but instead my time went to that. Is that time wasted? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because it's something that I can utilize maybe in a different storyline somewhere else, with laughing at this zany idea that I came up with. But one thing I can tell you with 100% certainty about this process is, if you write something down, whether you write down a note or you do a sketch or however you do it, and then you take it and you put it to the waste bin because you may think it's not good enough, you may think it's ridiculous, you may think whatever, it truly is lost forever. And sometimes part of the creative process, and you got to understand, is it is a process. It does take some time in order for all your ideas to come to fruition, to be able to enjoy those. It's like writing a book, and I've said this before, it's got a beginning and the middle and the end. So when you come up with the basic idea, the concept, don't disregard it at first. Go back to it and refine it a little bit later. You may be surprised to find that there's more there, and maybe what's holding the ideas back is just the way that you are approaching it and looking at it. And you may be saying to yourself, what do I mean by that? Well, I have a new scenario I got to design. I want to play this 4 Against Darkness the way I want to play it. I want to add elements into it and my minis and all that. Now, what I want to do is I write my notes down, instead of having to go back through a video log and looking at what happened. At this point, I can just put my notes, compile them together with my little sketches and everything, and I always have that visual reminder I can go back to. And on top of that, it also gives me another unique tool, particularly for me. I'm playing these games for myself, and I can sit and I can imagine all of this going on in my head. And to be honest with you, it's a simpler way to do that. But I'm trying to explain to a broader audience. And one of the things that I've always struggled with was how to do that. And what you have to realize is that anything that comes out of your imagination, any input that you put into it, is yours. And because of that, it's yours. It makes it completely unique unto itself. So don't underestimate yourself in the creation process. You have to remember, throw fear, doubts, or I think one of the things that I hear most often that's just horrible, well, I can't draw, or I can't. Okay, fine. If you can imagine basic shapes inside your imagination, I mean, if you're watching this channel, you're playing solo RPGs and you're already imagining stuff. And if you're theater of the mind, you should have no problem with this whatsoever. As a matter of fact, you should have a complete blockbuster rolling film inside of your imagination, complete with special effects and everything. But when you play solo, sometimes you want to go back and look on your experiences. Sometimes you want to detail to the way that you imagined it in your imagination for your setting, to cement it and give that particular world encounter, whatever it is that you built, uniquely yours. Now, one thing, if you're lacking with imagination, um, always a good place to start is go back to your library. Pull up some of your basic books, even your monster manuals. They're just filled with ideas, sketches, arts, concepts, ideas, descriptions, all kinds of things that can give you sparks of creativity. What do I mean by that? I've had this book sitting on my shelf for quite a long time. Quite a long time. Picked it up, a supplement book, pretty cool. Twisted lore, you know? I mean, how couldn't you fill an area with just the horrible things that are in here? Reading through it and reading some of the descriptions, I ran across this thing that kind of mimicked a human, but looked more like a ghoul. That's the way that they imagined it. But in my mind, I kind of thought about it in a different way, kind of more like a parasite that clings, and as it gets closer to a human being and it reaches out, maybe its skin has, I don't know, acidic properties that break down the flesh. Who knows? I haven't gotten to that stage of it yet. But the closest thing that came to idea when I was thinking about this that I've seen is this guy right here. Now, not the skeletal remains, but if you look closer, what I'm talking about is this kind of looks like this weird tapeworm looking thing that's basically animating the skeletal remains to be able to, for it to move around. And it has to move around because that's how it hunts. I like that idea with the reanimating the corpses to be able to hunt for its next meal. The other idea out of here, how this particular creature shapeshift to change itself to deceive humans to make it look like them as a parasite, kind of all brings everything together. It gives me a better idea for my particular scenario, how I want to design this encounter. And with that, it's of my making, of my imagination. And because of that, I don't have to rely on what it says in this book from its special attacks or what it has. This is a creature out of my imagination, it's not bound to that. I can give it whatever I want. And with a game like 4 Against Darkness, that's so simple, the dice mechanic is just so simplistic in making encounters and characters. The sky's the limit. This is just a miniature battle I'm having with some RPG element over it. But nevertheless, it's a playground for your imagination, and it's a great place for character creation, story building, encounters, or if you're like me and you just need a creative outlet, you have to be able to project what's in your imagination out onto paper or an instrument on sound, or write it out down on a piece of paper. Whatever it is, tools like these will help refine it. And I can tell you, refining when it comes to solo RPG is one of the best tools that we have. What I mean by that, just as I said, when you lay down that initial idea, don't put it to the trash bin, because then it's truly gone. Save it, work on it, come back to it, look at it with a fresh set of eyes. Particularly when you came up with the idea at that point, you may have had something else on your mind at that time. You could have had a stress from work. It could have been something that happened to you on the way to we'll say the grocery store, or whatever it was that inspired that. But then when you come back to it and you look at it with a different perspective, that's just going to give it a different level of creativity for you to explore and add to, refine it. What do I mean by this? Let's jump on down and to the table, and let's just take a closer look at some of the tools that we have for our creative processes. All right, so that's all the time I have for this video currently right now. In the next video, I'm going to pick up on the tabletop, and we're going to get into some of the things that I like to use. This is for me, and I'm hoping maybe for those of you out there, you may be able to get some ideas from this and inspiration for your own RPGs and to enriching it like they have for me. But as I've said from the beginning, when it comes to solo RPG, there's a great deal of imagination that goes into it. And don't become a randomized table slave. And what I mean by that is to where when you sit down to play a game, you cannot do anything without a randomized table. You can't even make a character without a randomized table. That's not good at that point. You're just relying on these things. They're tools. I want to show you how to break out of that mold and utilize more of your imagination and put more of yourself into your games and more of your influence. And I think you will see you'll be much happier with it. So with that being said, my friends, Artichoke Dip signing off.